All right. Hi, Lucas. How are you today?
Hey, Jodi. Yeah, really well, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well, thank you. Thanks so much for coming on and for your time spent with me today. And we are going to dive into men's health, which is something that I've wanted to dive into for some time on the podcast. So I'm really interested to talk with you all about that. And you've got a online course, and you are also completing your naturopathic studies. So that's really super exciting as well for you. So tell me a little bit about you. And I know you are an ex-professional soccer player. So how did you get into this line of work?
Yeah, well, I've always been profoundly interested in understanding the human body, and a lot of my research actually stems from a performance-based perspective. I was very much focused on what can I eat that's going to help me with training, what can I take that's going to support my recovery, things like that. And then it just sort of snowballed from there. I got involved in a startup here in Melbourne, helping to sort of formulate a nootropic formula, like a brain enhancer.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about that later too. Yeah.
Yeah. So from there, basically just fell in love with research, and then I was just collecting articles, PubMed papers, and just diving through the research and connecting with other nerds in this space. And yeah, and just and then eventually I thought, oh, it's about time I start my own Instagram, start my own page. And then about a couple of years back, I set up my ergogenic health Instagram, and just ever since then, it's just taken off through very original content, very, very unique, and just offering people a lot of value. That's my main goal. So yeah.
And I see that across all of the content that you share. It's really in depth, in detail, and real. And that research and that real information is so important out there for people. And that's one of my big values as well, is that people need real information that's been critiqued and given them the option to look at some different sides of the information as well. So yeah, well done. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. And the good part about it is that it really doesn't feel like work for me. I literally, no. I'll be up till 9 p.m., 9:30 at night. And sometimes I'm still designing posts this. I'm really enjoying this so much. So it really doesn't feel like work for me.
Yeah, it's creative. And when it's your passion and you love what you do, nothing's ever work, is it? Which is fantastic too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And so in terms of the biohacking and the nootropic and everything like that, there's a nootropic coming and you've helped with that startup. And so what sort of, is that going to be a supplement as such, or is it going to be a herbal supplement?
Yeah. So that formula, which I put together, and actually I'm the man behind that brand. It hasn't been manufactured yet, but basically it's a formula called Brain X, which essentially it has 2 herbal ingredients, one of which I think you may know. It's typically known as an aphrodisiac, Miraprimer.
Yeah.
You may be familiar with that.
Yeah, definitely.
And the other ingredient is also, it's unlikely that you've heard of it. It's catuaba. That's from Brazil. That's actually the chief ingredient in the formula. And basically that's combined with D-ribose, which is, very good for mitochondrial function, supporting ATP production. It's my bulk filler in the formula, because it's actually a sachet that people add to their coffee.
Okay.
And then the final ingredient's actually one that's heavily used for slowing cognitive decline, and that's found in a product called Suvinade, and that ingredient's called uridine monophosphate, and that basically increases phospholipids, improves dopamine receptor density, and massively helps with memory, verbal fluency, and things like that.
Super interesting. There's so much out there in relation to the nootropics, but having the quality there is the important part, and also having it, the effectiveness, and also having people know that it's not just the nootropic that's giving you the action. It's actually, looking after your health from all different levels as well, which is really important at the same time. So,
Yeah.
I look forward to that coming to the market and having a try as well.
Yeah.
So let's dive into men's health then. So, testosterone is one of those main key things that we talk about when it comes to men's health. What else is there that you look at when you're looking at the whole health of a man in those specific senses? And why are we focused on testosterone so much, and why is it so important?
Yeah, so I think in general, we can look at testosterone as like the hallmark sort of hormone for men. It's not the only thing that we want to optimize. Like obviously there are other markers like, fasting insulin, blood sugar levels, cholesterol markers, homocysteine, C-reactive protein, other markers like that. But I think really, given that there's a global decline in testosterone, it really is something that needs to be brought forward, and that's really what I'm trying to do. And some other functional medicine doctors in the US as well. They're doing a good job at that, and I'm learning a lot from them. But basically, I want to be empowering men to take control of their hormones and really give them the tools and the knowledge they need to sort of integrate that in and basically, take control of their testosterone and their other, because that's going to influence so many other aspects of their health. So we know that, like, just by them trying to, let's say we're steering a guy to try and optimize their testosterone, well, ironically, it's going to help so many other markers in their body just by chasing that one goal. Because to get to a good baseline testosterone, they have to optimize their sleep, they have to get their diet in check, they have to regulate their stress. Like, it's going to be impacting so many levels, and they're going to get healthier chasing that goal in the end, sort of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So the common reference ranges for testosterone in the pathology tests here, I can only speak for Australia really, but, what's your opinion on that? I know when I look at the optimal ranges for people, there is such a broad testing range in terms of what it takes into consideration for the population. What do you see, or what do you think about those reference ranges in relation to testosterone for men?
Yeah, well, like as I mentioned before, they've now reduced that. They've actually shortened the top end of that reference range. That's because there is a global average decline. Yeah. And so that's going to be the really sad part about it, I think, is that let's say a 25-year-old guy comes back, gets his blood test result back, and he's sitting maybe smack bang, like in the middle of that range, of that reference range. And he would, the doctor would, I'm nothing against GPs, but I'm just saying in general, the majority of them may look at it and be like, yep, so that result, you're normal, that's fine. Whereas, from a naturopathic point of view or a functional medicine point of view, we really want to see that 25-year-old male with levels where they should be, and that they should be really at the top end. Because at 25 years of age, men hit their peak in terms of testosterone output, and it's a steady decline every year after. Like they're getting, I'm not sure the percentage drop, but there is a steady decline from that 25.
Okay. So in relation to then where we should be looking at optimal ranges, men should be aiming for a certain range of testosterone across the board, or would it be still very individualized across each age group or each person?
It's a good question. So in terms of what the guys' goals are, they're trying to maximize for, they're trying to optimize for, like, say, body composition, or reducing body fat, or improving athletic performance, then really I see no dangers of having it at the highest possible end, so long as they are controlling the metabolites. So monitoring estrogen, because obviously in men, testosterone can get converted to estrogen. So if they got a lot of body fat, they're going to be converting a lot of that to estrogen. So we really want to we can monitor that, and we can. The good thing about naturopathic medicine, and like with our knowledge on nutrition and herbal supplements, we can integrate certain herbs like nettle root, which is excellent for reducing aromatase. The cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, all of these are fantastic for men to help to offset that. If they're going to chase that high test, then they're going to have to integrate these foods to help keep estrogen in check. We don't want to block it completely, because we know that when they use pharmaceutical grade like aromatase inhibitors, like tamoxifen and other very powerful aromatase inhibitors in men, that can actually have extremely serious side effects, such as like bone mineral density issues, brain issues. They lose their libido completely because they're crushing their estrogen, and so many other aspects as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that hormones are there for a reason, and we don't want to focus just on bringing one of those down or taking one of those out. We need a balance across for optimal levels within our bodies, either being a man or a woman. And we need those because they're equally protective and there for a reason to keep us in optimal health. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
So with the testosterone, then I see a lot of stress-related conditions, and stress is the key word across the board, I think, for health most days. Now, tell me about causes of low testosterone or issues with testosterone, and I'm assuming this will be something to do with stress as well. But let's talk about all those reasons why a man would find themselves with low testosterone.
Yeah, so let's have a look at, in terms of the stress so cortisol being the major stress hormone, we know that guys with elevated cortisol, generally speaking, they actually have increased aromatase, so they're getting even more estrogen, and then they're also getting a reduced production. It just shuts down the whole HPT axis. The body's shifting its resources and priorities towards survival, not reproducing. So then it will shift and shuttle its resources away from supporting testosterone and instead shifting it towards like survival, release adrenaline, release blood sugar, gets you ready to move to fight or flight sort of thing. So definitely stress is a hallmark issue for a lot of guys, and that definitely ties into the sleep aspect as well, because poor stress equals poor sleep, and poor sleep equals compromised ability to even make testosterone.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got so many other factors with sleep as well, like the growth hormone that happens, and the healing and the repair that happens, and the removal of toxins that happens, and that all has a big impact on hormonal production as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. Big time.
Yeah. So what are the other sort of reasons or leading causes of low testosterone in men then?
So I'd say, obviously, we've got stress, then sleep, then nutrient deficiencies is a big one. Yeah. Or just in general, a really crappy diet,
the sad diet.
Standard Australian diet. Highly refined carbohydrates, high inflammation as well, a heavy metal toxicity. That's a whole nother topic. Which that there's a lot of research now coming out about certain heavy metals accumulating in the actual testicles, compromising sperm production, things like that.
Yeah. What heavy metals are those? That's really interesting. What's in the research there for the types of heavy metals?
Lead, and I think arsenic, and obviously mercury is also heavily, powerfully estrogenic, and then also compromises glutathione, which is then going to impact redox status and antioxidant defense as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because men will generally, not saying that this is a across the board, but generally have more exposure to some of those heavy metals due to, labouring work or work that they're, doing a lot of, making and creating with wood and their jobs and very physical work, and they're coming up against all of that, and plus the chemicals as well, in their job, the painting and all of the buildings and everything like that too. So yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, sorry, I interrupted you there. So we've got diet, we've got heavy metals, obviously we've got stress is a huge major factor with testosterone. And so then looking at optimizing testosterone levels, what sort of things would you suggest for people to actually get to that next level of testosterone production, and how do they get to there?
Yeah, so I would say step number one, well, for any guys, to make sure that they're doing some form of weight training if they can, because weight training in general is going to upregulate the androgen receptors. It's going to significantly spike growth hormone and testosterone. So if they can incorporate, weight training, heavy squats, compound lifting, maybe 3 days a week, and then integrating some form of light cardio as well, just to help with the blood flow and oxygenation, and also ensuring that they're not in a caloric deficit every single day, because being in a caloric deficit is also a major stressor. And we can sort of get into fasting as well, but that's a little bit technical in terms of how it influences male hormone status. But in general, guys that are constantly in a caloric deficit will be compromising testosterone production. And the same goes for being in an extreme caloric surplus, overeating and binge eating and stuff. That's obviously going to affect their hormones as well. So ensuring they're eating sufficient or healthy fats, and we can get into, this is all the sort of stuff that I break down in my course. I break down exactly which fats men need to consume, exactly which fats they need to avoid, and what percentage of carbohydrates they want to be consuming, and also ensuring that they're getting enough protein as well.
Okay. Yeah, it's complex, and I think people, and that's where seeking out a practitioner to really support and outline goals and actually give them a directive to where to go, because doing it on your own, I think, is a little bit tricky in finding exactly where to focus on first. But yeah, I think exposure to all those toxins as well, but getting the diet right, I think, is super important. And exercise. So, a few things I've heard, I don't know if that's completely true, but, sugar, for example, eating some ice cream at nighttime can drop dramatically your testosterone. So that's probably something people need to be aware of. The sugar part of things, and then what builds it, even mentality. So I know it's not nice to say it on here, but I think they've done some studies with pornography, and so how it can actually raise testosterone levels, or even, just thinking about sex can raise testosterone levels. Is that something you found in the research too?
I'm glad you brought that up, because I literally I covered that in 3 minutes in a particular slide in my course, explaining how obviously that can have a traumatic effect on men's hormones, and also abstaining from ejaculation can also have an effect, but that is that's very individual, because obviously different guys have different levels and different arousal levels and things like that. So it's very subjective and individualized in that regard.
Okay. Yeah. And it comes down to, spiritual beliefs as well, isn't it? So, the ejaculation, for example, if a lot of them think that the life energy then is left, and therefore relating that back to testosterone. But yeah, I've not seen the research in relation to the actual hormonal levels. Maybe just, general energy and rebuilding, and that sort of taxes the system slightly. But it's very interesting to sort of delve into these different topics, because of the fact that, you can find a little bit more, not information, but then be able to build it up just in a different way, or at least be aware that, what you're doing is not actually doing you any good, particularly for your testosterone levels. Yeah. All right. So what are we looking for in someone who has high or low testosterone? What are the signs for both of those different, areas?
Yeah, I think the number one thing that most guys should be paying attention to is making sure that they're getting morning wood like every day, because that's quite a common thing that I've screened for in the past around, you know, some friends of mine and some clients, and you know, it's quite surprising to see how many guys are not waking up with morning wood, and that really should be the norm, because that's a sign that the body, you know, it's got healthy blood flow, healthy circulation. They're getting that. There's also a dopamine spike in the morning as well, and healthy testosterone as well. So that's obviously sign number one. It's not the be all and end all, because it sort of also matters when they wake up, because some guys can wake up at different stages of their sleep cycle, and that can also blunt the morning wood response. But I'd say, in general, men with higher levels of test will have strong libido, so extremely good sex drive, good energy levels, good mood, confidence, in general, like better focus and better like sort of discipline sort of thing, and better ability to build muscle, better overall parameters in terms of like inflammation itself, and even risk factors for certain diseases. Like they've linked low testosterone to so many different diseases and all causes of mortality, really. So like on the contrary, you got the symptoms of low testosterone are depression, low libido, poor sleep, low energy levels, poor ability to build muscle. You know, there's other things as well. Have you, like, you would have seen some other, in terms of your own clinical practice, you've probably seen some other symptoms in that regard? Or?
Yeah, I guess you know, it's weight gain and areas of inability to focus. I think mentally it can be seen in that, and injuries. A lot of injuries would come out of it, and that would be early stage. I would say low testosterone, definitely. That men, because you know, mentality has a huge impact on confidence. So I tie confidence and testosterone into it as well. And because someone who has low confidence will also more likely have more stress. That's very generalized, but yeah, I find that can be quite a common thing to see in men, definitely. Plus exposure to things like the estrogens, you know, there's estrogens that are out there, and our life now has been more exposed to more plastics in the water and things like that. So they're acting as estrogens in men's bodies as well, and therefore offsets that testosterone production, which is pretty tricky. So with the high then testosterone, would you ever think that we could see something, you know, super high that would be, and I know we said that generally not so harmful unless we look after that estrogen side of things, but what sort of things will we see in a really high testosterone male?
Well, it depends how high, because obviously there's guys out there that are actually injecting, like taking testosterone, which is TRT therapy. So obviously they're going to be reaching like supra physiological levels, which are like, I guess in general, that's where you're going to be running into a lot of the, you know, the risk factors of like thick blood and some of the other cardiovascular and things like that. But if they're sort of maxed out within the reference range, you know, then I don't really foresee major risks associated with that. There might be certain guys that have polymorphisms in their cholesterol markers. They may have issues regulating their cholesterol in that regard, but I mean, that's so easily managed with like herbal supplements and diet as well. So
absolutely. So would you see like a complete change in mentality with people who have really high testosterone? Would it be like a real ego coming out? You know, like you can see a man in the street, you're like, oh, he has too much testosterone.
It's a good point. Obviously, like I do think it would exacerbate the ego in that regard. But I remember my very, very first post on Instagram was actually a study showing how testosterone increases honesty in men.
Wow.
They did it was really, really fascinating. I was like, that was actually my very first post. I'm like,
Amazing.
This is so weird and I want to share it.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't think that, obviously, like couples, in general, like, it makes me wonder how many couples that fall apart, they all, marriage breakups and things like that. I wonder how much of that comes back to the guy having low testosterone, not because he's not performing sexually, but also because of his, his mental, the way he thinks and the way he behaves as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I was actually just having this discussion the other day. I don't know if you've heard of John Gray, the Men from Mars, Women from Venus author. Yeah. So in his recent books, he talks a lot about the testosterone and estrogen, and between the man and the woman, and how the woman brings out the testosterone in the man, and the man supports the estrogen production in the woman, and the progesterone as well, and the different stages of the cycle of the woman, and then how the man can then have either increased testosterone or reduced testosterone according to how the woman's acting or treating him. And I find that really fascinating because the dynamic of relationships, and the way that the working world is now, is that women are more likely to be in a working role, and then men used to be in this working role, whereas now it's a lot more equal. So then where does that leave those hormonal levels? I find it so fascinating. It can actually show that relationships and behaviors can change hormonal levels as well.
Yeah That's super fascinating.
Yeah. All right, so in terms of is there any herbs that you would recommend, or that you've looked at or looked into, that help men with their testosterone production?
Yeah. So before you mentioned you sort of mentioned the fact that we want that life force, that Jing sort of thing.
Yes. The
TCM perspective.
Yes.
Well, actually, there is one particular TCM herb which I believe is probably the most powerful in regards to improving androgens in men, and that one's in TCM. It's known as Ru Kong Rong, but the normal name for that is Cistanche. So it's Cistanche, Cistanche. And this particular herbal, which probably, it's definitely one of my favorites. I use it 3 times a week or so. I cycle as well because it's quite powerful. And it's definitely, from what I've seen in the rat studies, it's unfortunate that there's no real human studies, but maybe one day I can pioneer some of that research. I don't know.
Sounds good. If you've got the passion for the research, do it.
What we found in some of the rat studies, we're getting 2.3-fold increase in sperm volume, tripling sperm motility, sperm counts, just really supporting overall luteinizing hormone. It's restoring the hypothalamic. It basically works on some key parts in the brain. So it's acting on kisspeptin, which is it's like an endocrine regulating pathway in the brain. It's also modulating some of the CYP enzymes to actually create testosterone from cholesterol. And that's the other thing, by the way, just touching on cholesterol, and I'm sidetracking a bit, but low cholesterol is an issue as well. And, we can talk about cholesterol lowering medications.
Absolutely.
Being one of the biggest, that's a major issue because, we're reducing the building block for all our hormones.
Because a lot of people think cholesterol is such a misdiagnosed or misknown or misinformed part of us, I think, and it's starting to change now for sure. But so many people don't realize that cholesterol forms their hormones. And when you say that to them, they're like, nah, I'm like, well, yes, the hormone pathway shows us this, look at it. And I actually have to pull out my hormone pathway a lot of the time just to show people where it can get like shunted off to or get produced. Yeah, it's super important.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Cistanch is possibly like number one, and then obviously there's you got your other standards like tribulus, but the standardization for like the key constituents that really matters. So obviously, like a poor quality tribulus from the chemist is not going to have much of an effect, whereas like working with a practitioner like yourself, we have access to the very powerful botanicals, and tribulus is quite good. Then we have like pine pollen as well. Pine pollen's exceptional for men's health in general. It's just rich in, obviously you've heard of phytoestrogens. Phytoestrogens.
Yeah.
Well, pine pollen's extremely rich in phytoandrogens, which is like plant-based, androgens.
Interesting. Yeah. Touching on the quality, I think quality is hugely important with all of these things. And like you say, when you're creating or making a product, it's something that you need to be taken into consideration, because it can be whether it's going to be efficacious or not. It's completely, either or. But with herbs, for sure, it's where they're grown, it's how they're grown, it's how they're stored, it's how they're what solvent's being used, what percentage of the solvent. There's all sorts of different things that come into it. So just for the audience out there, it's really, you can't just walk into a supplement shop or a chemist or a supermarket and think you're going to get any results from a lot of the products that are there. So that's something that I'm super passionate about as well. Yeah. So I'm slightly off tracking here, but saw palmetto, what's your perspective on that? And I know it's more the prostate health, but how does prostate health also tie into testosterone? Is there any links like that you found there in terms of the research?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm really glad you brought this up. So saw palmetto, because I'm really passionate about like the medications that are used to reduce hair loss, like finasteride and some of the powerful like DHT blocking medications.
Yes.
Because the side effects of those are somewhat irreversible for certain guys. Like, for example, and these are some scary stories of certain guys that I know that have been on finasteride, and 2 years later they've still got really bad side effects even after stopping. They're getting the reduced, they're getting erectile dysfunction, reduced orgasm sensation, blunted orgasms, reduced erection qualities, things like that. All of these long-lasting effects from certain medications. So in terms of saw palmetto, there are some guys that are really sensitive to saw palmetto in that regard. So I tend to prefer other botanicals, like nettle root doesn't really have much of that nasty suppression that saw palmetto can have.
Okay.
Because I think saw palmetto may have minor anti-androgenic properties, which is good for someone with, let's say prostate cancer or some sort of androgen-driven tumor or something like that. It can be beneficial, but for young lads, in their age of 20 to 30, then I would say, opt for less intense, because saw palmetto is very powerful in that regard. Whereas nettle root, Eclonia cava, some other botanicals, which I can list off another time, they're not as aggressive in their DHT blocking effects.
Yeah.
But you're spot on though. When you said how does testosterone link in with prostate health? Okay, what we know is that DHT does promote prostate enlargement, but really it's the combination of high DHT alongside high prolactin and high estrogen, which really sets the stage for BPH and actually a varicocele. Have you heard of a varicocele?
I have. Yeah, I have.
What they've found with with varicocele, they actually believe that is the absolute root cause of BPH in men, because that enlarged vein that's from the spermatic cord going back up towards the body, when that's dilated, you're actually getting a recirculation of testosterone, and it's in that region, and then it's sort of, when I came across that paper on PubMed, I was like, wow, no one's really, there's so many guys out there that may have BPH, and the root cause of it is actually like they've got a varicocele, like they've got an enlargement in their sperm cord.
Very interesting. And for those that don't know, BPH is benign prostate hyperplasia. So that's just the swelling of the prostate gland. Yeah. The good part about that is also with the varicocele, there's two ways of going about it. They can either get like surgery, like a 10 to 15 minute embolization surgery, or they can use a really powerful botanical known as horse chestnut extract. That's been shown to help with varicoceles, and also pycnogenol as well, which is pine bark extract, which is quite cool as well. Yeah, they're not as commonly talked about, either of those, the horse chestnut and the pine bark, which is really interesting. And I've not used clinically the pine bark as yet, so that's something that will be on my radar from now on, for sure. So in terms of with the prostate, and I'm not sure if you know much about the PSA and the way that they test the prostate specific antigen. Have you done any research on that and the viability of actually testing that marker as an ongoing prostate health marker, or in terms of any of the hormonal health, in relation to all of that? Is there anything sort of linked up between those?
Yeah, do you mean the fact that it can fluctuate, sort of thing?
Fluctuate, yeah. So some people will have a higher level normally for themselves, or some will have quite low levels, and then sometimes it will fluctuate up and down, and then that sometimes brings attention to a doctor or a specialist to say, oh look, let's do something about this. And in most cases, we don't need to do much about it, because it is the body's natural fluctuation from homeostasis and then coming back down into it. Is there anything that you've seen in terms of the literature, about this and this specific marker? Because I've seen some varying research about it, and I'm not too sure about this specific marker, as we can see it as something that we only look at in our blood results for our prostate health.
Yeah, well, I personally haven't really dived too far into that research, but I guess you would need to look at that, from other angles as well. Like we'd want to run other tests, just to sort of can't be just relying on that one test and using that as the gold standard. There's probably other tests out there that are probably more effective. I'd be looking at not just the PSA, but then obviously like some other inflammatory markers like CRP, ESR, and then possibly analyzing their prolactin, their estrogen, the DHT. It's probably best to take a multi-pronged approach when we're looking at if they've got elevated PSA. Yes, that may be a little red flag, and we might want to dive deeper. But like you said, I don't think it's a very reliable way of just analyzing that one marker. Would need to use it as as part of many other markers.
Yeah, I agree. I think we get stuck on as a medical type or allopathic type vision of just getting too dug down into one marker. And I think a lot of people then get stressed about that sort of thing. They get stressed about that one particular marker's change just 2 points in the last 6 months. It's like, no. We're looking at everything. It's not just that. We have to look at all these other markers, as well as how you're feeling and how you're acting and what your lifestyle's like. It's not just one thing. And I think that's easier to focus on just one, rather than change across the board our lifestyle and our mentality and our stress and all of those things. So I think that's the information also that's important for people to understand when you're looking at anything in terms of results of any sort. Yeah. All right. So just touching on mental health and hormones. And then I'll get you to do a quick snapshot of the best recommendations for men to increase their testosterone. So, but firstly, the mental health, how can we associate the hormones and mental health, and particularly in men?
Yeah. So what a lot of guys are unfamiliar with is the fact that testosterone has many metabolites and other what they call neurosteroids. So these are basically biologically active metabolites of testosterone that are actually playing a huge role in altering neurotransmitters. So one of which is allopregnanolone, which is a very well researched antidepressant. They've actually given it in rat studies to it causes a robust and rapid antidepressant effect and lasts for days after administration. So when it comes to like in general, like optimizing for testosterone, they're going to be getting the byproducts of all these other metabolites, and that's going to be affecting mood. And then what we also know is that testosterone plays a huge role in altering and sort of affecting dopamine as well. So that's going to be having a huge effect on their alertness, their focus, their drive, their passion, and I'm sure it also affects some other pathways that we haven't even researched yet. So yeah, it's having such a like pleiotropic effect in the body. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's where also stress comes in. You know, once you're stressed, then they all have that massive ball effect of ongoing issues and disruptions. And then, obviously brain health and toxicities are coming into the brain, and then the gut health, and it's all tied in. We can get so complex, but it does come down to basic health, really. So what are the sort of a quick snapshot, what would be your best recommendations for men out there? If you were to have anything to say to them, what would you say for them for increasing their testosterone or looking after their testosterone?
Okay, the first and foremost is icing their testicles.
What? Did not expect that one to come out.
Yeah. So, and obviously I've been interviewed on the radio about this before. Basically, I even created a whole Facebook group dedicated to this practice because I was seeing so many guys come back to me saying, how much better their libido is, their morning woods come back, they're feeling great. And I looked into the research and I'm like, okay, what's the rationale behind this? Because it's basically used to enhance fertility in men. There's many studies where like they use nocturnal scrotal cooling to improve fertility. And even on my Instagram, like I had couples come back to me, and like I had one lady come back to me and she's like, 2 months down the track and, she's pregnant now. The fact that his husband was icing for 15 minutes a night. And that's a free intervention as well. So that cost them no money.
Exactly.
So that's probably number one, like probably the easiest thing that guys can implement. And obviously like avoiding heat. So then, avoiding using the sauna, because I mean, sauna therapy is awesome for detox, but it's also going to be affecting, as long as they're keeping their testicles cool in the sauna, then
ice pack on the testicles and then hop into your sauna. Love it. Oh, poor guys. So, I'm glad I don't have to ice my balls.
That's probably number one. Then obviously I personally really like using taurine. I take 3 grams and I recommend 3 grams of taurine to most guys. Because that's basically a really potent antioxidant within, and it basically accumulates in the testes, and really it's very good for restoring luteinizing hormone and sperm production, things like that. So Yeah, it's probably number 2. Number 3 is that one that I mentioned before, that herb, cystanch. I've seen a lot of guys see benefit from using that.
Okay.
And then obviously like heavy lifting as well. You know, and obviously the mindset, as you mentioned before. So like, you know, having that confidence, that belief that they can change, that they can see differences in their health. Yeah, they're probably like top 5. Probably missed a lot of other ones that are like the most.
I think it's a pretty good top 5. I think it's a pretty good top 5. I think people just need something that they can go to and start implementing. And obviously, if they want more detail or more directive, you know, see a health professional, you know, naturopath, functional medicine professional. I wanted to quickly ask though, because I have seen a little bit of research surrounding red light therapy, so photobiomodulation, and what do you think about nitric oxide? Anything to increase nitric oxide production? Yeah.
So that's really good. So with the nitric oxide, so we have many botanicals. I mentioned one before, like we've got pine bark, grapeseed extract, you know, beetroot juice, which is also excellent for supporting blood flow. Probably one pretty underrated food for like supporting blood flow and erections is actually arugula, like rocket, because it's very rich in nitrates. It's actually higher in nitrates than beetroot itself.
Really? I love rocket. Shame I'm not a man.
So
men out there, get onto the rocket.
There you go.
And then you'll have a rocket. There you go. Okay, that's really cool. And so what about the photobiomodulation? Have you had much research around in that? You know, I've heard a lot of guys like putting the red light on their balls and, you know, trying to produce more testosterone that way. Is there anything solid there?
There is actually a lot of research to back the use of, you know, red light therapy.
Yeah.
But the caveat is, they really need to know the distance. So like, it's really technical. I tried to get into it, but I just quit. You know, I just thought it was just way too technical to understand. So distance and time are the key things. So like, how long are they exposing their gonads to the red light and from what distance?
Yeah.
But alternatively, there is the natural red light.
The sun.
Yeah.
I've seen that come through on pictures and people are sunning their balls, yes, and their bottoms are in the air, literally.
Yeah. So I believe, well, just from anecdotal experience and from suggesting it to other guys, you know, 2 to 3 seconds of sun exposure down below has had a positive impact. Now, whether or not that's the right nanometers, like the right frequency, I'm not sure, but we do know that there's even guys out there that are basically using vitamin D drops on their, and even vitamin K2 as well, because we know that they both support testosterone. So it makes sense. It makes sense that, but obviously, you know, we run the risk of, you don't want to cook them as well. So
exactly, they're very temperature sensitive, I hear. Yes. All right. I think that's a good way to end the podcast. Thank you so much, Lucas. That was a ball. That was literally a ball. I would love to have another chat about men's health down the track, and definitely have a chat about the nootropic that you have coming up, and ready for, you know, getting it out there as well into the market. So something that I'm very passionate about is nootropics. Obviously, being someone who needs to retain information, you need a lot of help in that regard a lot of the time as well. So, which is lovely. So I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Jodi. I really enjoyed it.